All right, well, hopefully we'll get some more residents onto our call tonight about xeriscaping. I want to welcome everyone to our seminar. This is the first of, well, we don't know how many more we're going to do, but we're going to see how tonight goes and see where we can go from here. I'm Jama. I'm the residential coordinator for the architectural review side of Highlands Ranch Community Association. I'm really excited that all of you took the time out of your evening to join us tonight to discuss xeriscaping. And unfortunately, the tornado has provided us with an opportunity to make some changes to our yards and maybe try something new. So let's talk xeriscaping tonight. During this webinar, your microphones will be muted, and we will have a question and answer session at the end. So feel free to use our chat box, which can be found in your control panel on the bottom of your screen. If we are unable to get to your questions tonight, I will provide an email address, but it is improvements@hrcaonline.org. You can send your email questions there, and we will respond to those as quickly as possible. But again, the question and answers will jump onto those at the end of the event. We are fortunate enough tonight to have Scott Benke joining us. He will be your primary presenter. He is a certified arborist and the owner of Lawn Care Solutions. Now, without further ado, I will pass the presentation off to Scott.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for spending time with us this evening. Thank you, Jama. My name is Scott Benke. I'm one of the co-owners of Lawn Care Solutions with my business partner, Troy Mudgett. I think he's out in the virtual audience this evening. I am a certified arborist. I'm a CSU Master Gardener. Also a qualified water efficient landscaper certified, as well as sustainable landscape management. And I'm the current president of CalCap, which is the Colorado Arborists and Lawn Care Professionals Affiliation. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to talk about xeriscape. This is one of my favorite topics to discuss. I will try to not get overexcited and keep my pace at a good even keel for everyone to follow. LCS is a large-scale landscape maintenance company, but we do also do design, build, install. We have a large emphasis on sustainable practices and responsible water use using smart technologies and xeriscape conversions, especially with turf grass conversion to xeric and low water landscapes. We also perform tree work, plant health care, chemical application, as well as snow removal and holiday lighting. A lot of you in Highlands Ranch may have seen us. You might live in a sub-association that we service as well. So tonight we have a bunch of topics we're going to cover. Like Gemma said, we're going to have a Q&A at the very end. I'm more than happy to answer as many questions as I can in the time that we have after this. I am very passionate about this topic. I do believe that this is the future of landscaping, and some of us with the unfortunate tornado might have an opportunity, like Gemma said, to try something new in our yards. And that something new might fall into the sustainable or lower water use landscape. So hopefully HRCA continues these video series. I think this is a fun topic, and I do think a lot of us can benefit from a lot of the better practices in the industry that we have for our yard. So typically, I'm the one selling these services, and I'm going to try to walk through some options for you guys to do it on your own and for you to take control of the xeric install. So hopefully you guys get out of this what I intend for you to have. So xeriscape, let's start what it is. It comes from the word xeros. It means dry, not zero. So what we're trying to do is install these lower water use, drought tolerant landscapes that have lower water needs. We live in an arid climate. It can be very hostile to be a plant living outside. We have things from low water in our droughts to hail to high temperatures to temperature swings. And now apparently we have tornadoes in Highlands Ranch. There's a lot of reasons that we do these xeric installs, and they're different to everybody. So we're going to talk about some of the reasons why and the benefits of. And a lot of these landscapes that we install, the low water, they are regionally specific and they're community specific, and they each have their own set of standards. But the main reasons of why we're doing these installs doesn't change. So in our industry, you hear a lot of terminology. We say xeriscape, we call it Coloradoscape, we call it localscape. My favorite is waterwise. I'm sure we'll come up with something else, but they all mean the same thing. So like I said, it's never a xeroscape. This type of landscape doesn't really give us any benefit. It doesn't add to your property value. And then also installing this much rock is something at the moment we're not really even allowing in Highlands Ranch. We need to incorporate other materials. So what Highlands Ranch would like to see is only about 25% rock, 50% mulch, and the rest covered in planting materials. And if you were doing this for sustainability or low water landscape, we want those plants to be the low water need plantings, and then we need to irrigate them appropriately, which we'll discuss in a little bit. So as this trend continues, I know there's a lot of research going into the value added. Before we were doing, when someone said that a landscape added value, it typically meant large trees, large mature trees. But this new trend is showing that this is not this specific one, but a properly installed xeric is adding value to your landscape via its sustainability. So the main target of sustainability and or xeric is to just get away from the high use landscapes. We want to start to eliminate some Kentucky bluegrass. Our goal is to start to integrate some of these low water landscape strategies into our existing landscape. So the goal is not to get rid of all of the turf grass or every bit of grass everywhere. It definitely serves a role. It's beautiful. It's fun to maintain. It looks great when you have it in your yard. So maybe not a full conversion of every yard of every piece of turf grass is the answer. So we just want to start integrating some of these things into our current practices. We want to get to more of the medium and low use waters. So, it's alternative turf grasses, it's our xeric installs, and then our low water use would be full install of low maintenance, low water, zero irrigated species of planting material. Something I tell our clients a lot is if you're fighting an area of turf grass to keep it alive, I don't believe turf grass is worth the fight. Let's eliminate the irrigation over there, run drip if possible, and let's install something that's a little bit more sustainable and stop putting good money after bad and keep attacking these areas that we're struggling anyway to keep alive. So why do we xeriscape? Or better yet, why do you want to xeriscape? We're all here because we have some interest in being better stewards of this precious resource of water. We use a lot of our water on our landscape. Of our total home use when we are in our growing season, it's about 50% of your water, sometimes more. So it is a significant amount of water that you're using. The obvious answers to why we want to xeriscape is to save money, but there's a lot of other motivating factors that go into installing and converting turf grass into a xeric landscape. So this wheel here is something that the EPA and a lot of municipalities have come up with of some benefits of why we do xeriscape. So, locally landscaping, that's not just landscaping specifically for your region with plants designed or bred or found for our specific areas. It also means you're supporting local businesses, you're supporting local rock yards, you're supporting local nurseries and garden centers. The healthy soils, everybody's dug in their yard. If you have just a contractor installed yard from original build, the soils are always not optimal. A big thing for me is the right plant, right place. You have the opportunity to really select better planting materials that will have a lot more longevity, a lot less maintenance, and utilize a lot less resources. The main one, conserving water. That's typically everyone's go-to, but when they see other options, they get excited about more. Protecting air quality. So, we're adding more planting material into our environment. We're also not mowing as much when we're having these low water landscapes, reducing carbon emission. The conserving of energy plays into that as well. We're using less effort to get water to these landscapes. That's less stress on the municipality as well as on you locally. And then one of my favorite aspects of it is creating a better habitat for not only birds and pollinators, but it really is a fun thing. So I have a xeric yard. And one of my favorite things about it is watching my kids chase the little hummingbirds and see all the different bugs and bees and have those back in. Those aren't always available to look at and have in a turf grass yard. So the main principles of how to do xeric. The number one is to plan and design. So this is a very crucial step. We really want to define what you're trying to accomplish, what I'm trying to accomplish if I'm going to do my yard. What is your goal? Is it pollinators? Do you want to install a pollinator garden? You might select different plantings. You might want to go almost no water landscape, little to low maintenance. Maybe you want to increase just living spaces and get rid of the turf grass and install fire pits and or patios. These are some options that we'll talk about. But this planning process is very important because we do live in a homeowners association. We do need to have a good plan to submit to HRCA. The soil improvement is a big one. Like we talked about, not all these soils are adequate for what we were trying to accomplish. So when you're able to put in new plants or you're having a redo or a start over, you have the ability to add some good positive beneficials into your soil, a lot of good amendments. It'll let all your plants grow better, and you can use less water when we have a better soil medium to grow in. Number 3 is limiting your turf grass. So when we go back and talk about that target, the turf grass, the Kentucky bluegrass, is that high use landscape. So that's one of the things we want to start to eliminate some of that. So if there's a corner of your yard that you just can't keep green, or one of your irrigation zones was broken last year and you never got around to reseeding, these are really good options for us to start reducing and limiting the turf grass. We have the ability to redo some of the irrigation and to irrigate efficiently in these areas. The application method that's preferred is direct drip to these plants. That direct drip is subterranean. It's not exposed to the elements like your pop-up heads for your turf grass. So that is utilizing the water that you're spending your money on a lot more efficiently and getting it where you want it to go. Selecting the plants, this is the fun part. You're not adhering to a traditional style of landscape of 5 plants in a row, 3 in front of it. You really get to mix and match and kind of play with your space a whole lot more. You get to add plants, you get to plant them against a boulder, have different impact. You really get to explore your space a lot. It's really fun. There's so many good plants. We're going to go over some of my favorites as well as a whole bunch of options if you guys aren't very familiar with all the beautiful planting materials that we have for xeric. And then mulching. This helps build up the soils and it helps protect the soil and keep the water. I always recommend around tree rings, and then a lot of your large woody shrubs I like to mulch around. So we were talking about how much you need. So 50% of your yard can be mulch. That's a big square footage. It's also a lot cheaper and a lot less labor intensive for yourself to do it, to put it down. And then the maintenance. So the long-term maintenance of these shrubs, I want to talk about it. It is low maintenance. It is not no maintenance. With some proper pruning, you're going to have some continued watering. And you may need to have some replacements throughout the life of the landscape, but they are significantly lower than mowing every week. So Centennial Water, your water district, I don't work for them and I'm not speaking on behalf of them. Just, I am familiar with some of the fun things that they offer for you guys and for us as homeowners and anyone that lives in the HOAs. They have rebate plans. Unfortunately, they have been fulfilled this year. They open back up next year on March 1st. I do believe they're going to continue this, but like I said, I don't speak for them or work with Centennial Water. So the rebates for your yard of a conversion, they max out at about 1,000 square feet. And the Coloradoscape or Xeriscape low water must cover 75% of your yard at maturity. They have some really talented folks over there, so they will be able to see what you've installed and they will know, moving forward what that'll look like. So currently right now it's at $2 a square foot. I don't know what they're doing next year, but I do think that they have, they want to go forward with this program. The plans and the installations are not retroactive. So if you are doing an install right now and you submit for it next year, they're not going to retroactively give you the rebate. So if you are in the process of it, maybe contact Centennial Water and see what you can do. Irrigation is a big deal inside the xeric. So when we are with all the new technologies, Centennial Water is also offering you guys some rebates to put on rain sensors or flow meters or other sensors. If you're not familiar with smart controllers or Wi-Fi and weather-enabled controllers, there's rebates for these as well. These are really fun ways to monitor your usage of water. You can run them from your smartphone and your computer, and they're all Wi-Fi enabled. And then the high-efficiency nozzles. So this doesn't change the amount of need of your plant material, but what it does is it drastically increases your efficiency of your water use. You have a lot less waste when you're using these high efficiency nozzles and these newer technologies. So you're not spending money of it running down the sidewalk if you're properly installed. All right, so let's get started about some xeric. I'm going to walk through a couple xeriscapes that we've designed and installed. A couple of them might not pertain to you. Maybe you want to do a corner. I'm going to walk you guys through an entire yard. So this next project was an entire yard where we removed everything and then reinstalled it. But it could be different for you. Like I said, it's what you're trying to accomplish with Xeriscape. So this was just a contractor build. It was a new build. It's 5 plants in a row with a tree and a square of turf grass. So it's 250 square feet of grass, 270 square feet of garden space surrounding it. So we made our plan. I'm going to have some of our principles used in the bottom right corner of the first wheel that we saw. So at this residence, we removed everything in this landscaping, including the tree. The top half had died. Something might have happened to the root ball upon installation, but that tree was removed. We removed the grass mechanically and then came back and chemically treated the remaining of the grass that came up after we removed it. So we're going to talk about some turf grass removal options also. And then when we chemically sprayed and removed the rest of the turf grass. So the next step here was to have our plan. So this is a landscape plan in an AutoCAD. So this was the landscape plan submitted to an HOA. They approved it, so we had our plan. Our plan was to limit some turf grass. We selected our plants, and then we also redid the entirety of the irrigation system all the way back to the manifold or to where the valves are. So the entire yard got redone. So as we're planting it, our strategy to keep it nice and clean, we do fabric the entire yard and then we cut it all away. So we're only using fabric under larger cobble. I do like to get mulch directly on the bare ground. So this is somewhere we're able to reinstall our landscape. Underneath that fabric, the ground was tilled. So we have an even distribution of some better soils in the areas of which we were going to do our planting. The planting selection is fun at this particular yard. A homeowner did come to the nursery with us because some of the xeric plants people aren't familiar with. And they got to come help pick out some of their plants. It was kind of a fun process. And this is the final install. This was a year after install. I drove by it the other week. It is even more full now. So when we're doing these, these plants do go dormant in the winter, like your turf grass does. But what's nice is when you add some different values, you bring in boulders as a dry stream bed on the right, you get to kind of break up and add interest year round. So when the plants have all gone dormant and you're going in and pruning them, there's still some interest in this landscape. So this landscape, also a really neat thing about this is you don't touch it all year. They irrigated it probably 2 times a week for the entirety of the growing season. And then they came through and they cut almost every plant material down to the ground. And it was one 30-gallon trash bag was all the stress that it put on the trash receptacles and the landfill. And then we're mulching all of the areas that we want to keep the water down. So our tree, definitely recommend having mulch around our tree ring. So before and after, right next to each other, and then it's just the long-term maintenance, like I discussed. We're only having 1 trash bag's worth of trash rather than the weekly mowing and the clipping collection and the edging. This is very, very, very low use and low maintenance landscape. So when we go back and touch about our 7 principles and process and why we did it, we achieved a lot of goals with something like this. We created a habitat for pollinators. We landscaped locally. We improved the soil, conserved the energy, not only of the actual carbon emission of mowing, but the energy of the homeowner themselves, not having to mow every weekend. We got to choose very zone-specific plants. If you're not familiar with the hardiness zones, we are zone 5, 5B here in Highlands Ranch. Something to always look at when you're selecting your plants if you're doing some online research. But we walk through the whole plan and design, improve your soil, limit the turf grass, irrigate it efficiently. These are when you follow these steps, it's very freeing to play inside the design that you're going to have. So if you don't have a professional landscaper coming in to make your design, not everyone wants to do that. A lot of people want to do it on yourself. You can draw and submit your own designs. Hand drawn is totally fine for HRCA. But there's also a lot of prefabricated designs for you. We're going to do our best to get these on the website for you to utilize. So I think HRCA is going to post some of these. All these designs I'm going to show you are from the Plant Select program that's ran out of Denver Botanic Gardens. These are all low water landscape plants. They are all xeric. They're all water wise. So you can use any of the plants from their website, and you can know that you're going to irrigate them all about the same, and they're all going to be about the same care. So what you can do is take some of these prefabricated designs and mold them and turn them into what you want, or utilize the space differently. But you can pull bits and parts from all these designs. There's some that are big, there's some that are small. We're going to get these all on the website for you. And these are just great tools to share and then to get the approval process. It also is a really great resource, to really have someone that was a professional designer give this to you and you can play with it and you can have a good, strong foundation to begin your xeric process. And then if you do have trouble kind of seeing what this would look like from the bird's eye view, they also have a lot of themes for you, so you can kind of see what that theme looked like from the previous design, what it looks like at maturity. These are some of my favorite plants. This is that late season beauty. They have them all titled. This is a great way to look and see how these plants play together. And then, like I said, you don't have to adhere to that traditional straight across landscaping where everything's hedged into a sphere. You get to really play with the shapes and the blooms. This is a fun color combination that they provided. And then we have another design. There's plenty of these on that website for you guys to take a look at. And so once again, that's all from the Plant Select website. Let's discuss doing it yourself a little bit. So I have a house that I found inside of Northridge, an area that was highly affected by the tornado that came through in June. I knocked on your door and you weren't home. I used your yard. Give me a call if you're in here and you want to talk about getting the xeric installed in your house. So at this home, they have a large tree in their front yard, like a lot of us had when our homes were built. We had turf grass and there was one tree. So this is the reason why we chose this property. They had their beautiful mature tree removed forcefully by that tornado. So like we were saying earlier with JMO, let's really try to take advantage of this. If this unfortunately did happen to you, you have the opportunity to find some silver lining, as it is sad that you did lose a beautiful, strong, mature tree. We can try to take advantage of it and maybe install something that is different than what you had before. There used to be turf grass under that tree. What happened over time is that tree either blocked the irrigation and then did block the light and then needle cast, and then the turf grass no longer lived under that tree. But you have healthy turf grass to the right. So, thinking about our target goals from earlier, turning this into a medium use instead of the high use landscape that it was. So let's explore some of the options that we had for this yard. We could always just go right back and install Kentucky bluegrass right into the left-hand side of this yard, which is okay. But if we're talking about water-wise design and install, let's move forward with what we kind of want to see. So we have the turf grass on the right-hand side. Let's just say magically, and for ease sake, we had 2 irrigation zones. Zone 1 and Zone 2. It very rarely works out this beautifully with your irrigation, but for this demonstration, there's 2 turf grass zones. So what we want to do is kind of mitigate this area in the middle. We want to get a strong edge. You can either use landscape metal edging, or we can do a rock boulder edge. We're going to install more xeric natural look, so using boulders and rock is an acceptable way to edge off your turf grass on one side. So when I was talking earlier about the other landscape job, there's the mechanical way to remove your turf grass and define that edge. You can rent a sod cutter at Home Depot, or we can use one of these fancy sod removal machines that you kick manually. They are very labor intensive. We have another option of the chemical and the organic method. The organic method is great. So it's a layered approach. Think about like an organic lasagna, right? So what we're doing is putting down compost and cardboard and compost and mulch, and that's choking out the turf grass. The nice thing about this approach is you can plant right into that medium, right into that lasagna when you want to do your planting installs, and you don't have to put any chemical down on your yard. Now, I'm a big proponent of responsibly used chemical. I do believe if you're not comfortable using them, there are lots of professionals you can hire that can come put that down, that have licenses with the Department of Agriculture. They'd be more than happy to come and assist you. I have at the end of this presentation where you can find people that have licenses. So we've defined our turf grass area. We have our edge. We fixed the turf grass in the laid out zone that we have. So Zone 1 is where we're going to put our xeric. Zone 2 is where we're going to maintain the turf grass. We're not going to eliminate all of it. We're just going to start utilizing and implementing these new strategies into what we have. So selecting our plants. We're selecting our plants. We've got them installed. We went to the local nursery. We've amended our soils. When I'm advising people on how to amend your soils, never use more than 30% of a compost or an amended soil. Try to use a lot of that native soil that is there. We're just going to amend that soil. We're not going to re-engineer all of the soil. If we put down too much bagged product or bulk product of an eco grow, these plantings of low water landscape views are not going to really thrive in those conditions. They're going to get really bogged down. That also holds a lot of water. A lot of these plants want to dry out in between waterings. So we've solidified our turf grass area. We amended our soils. We found our good plants, our low water landscape plants. We got them planted in the ground. So next we want to have our dedicated irrigation zones, our left and our right. So this is something that's very crucial inside of a xeric install. It's probably the most important piece, and it's how do we water this efficiently? So in the industry, what we talk about is hydrozoning. So we want to water like plants with like irrigation. So when I mentioned that it was broken beautifully into zone 1, zone 2, it's never really done like that. But if we had that ability to separate those two zones, we want to create a hydrozone, right? So that's the practice of clustering the plants and or turf together with the similar watering requirements so that we can conserve water. What we don't want to do is have multiple types of needs on one zone. What that does is it overwaters some and underwaters others. And what you're going to have to do is irrigate to the point of the maximum amount of need, which means that the plants that use low water, they're going to get drowned out. So we really want to be efficient about and conscious of what plants we are selecting to integrate into our xeric installs. That doesn't mean you have to use 100% xeric. You might want to put a couple more drips or amend a soil or put some water holding polymer in a rose shrub. And there's no reason why you can't have your roses and have xeric surrounding it, right? We just want to start integrating these new practices. So in this residence, the zones that we would need loosely would be one, our low water planting, so the shrubs that are low water along the side of the home. A second zone would need to be for these trees in the corner. Both have different needs of water, so you can run them at different times, different frequencies. The high water use shrubs that are along the street in the driveway. This property has annual flowers, a lot higher water need in a smaller area, so that's a separate irrigation zone. And then the lawn in the back. So at a minimum, this home would need 5 zones. So not all of our homes are equipped to have 5 zones. Some only have 2, some have 3. So this is somewhere where I would recommend hiring a professional to rebuild your manifold, and then you could take it from there on your own and just have them add some zones for your low water landscapes. If you want to do it yourself and you want to convert our existing pop-up heads, you can go to Home Depot and Rainbird as well as other manufacturers make conversion kits. So what you can do is take out the pop-up heads and slide these on. It puts some spaghetti line emitters right there, and then you can run those drips directly to your plants, and you can replace every pop-up head in that zone with these drip emitters. So what you're doing is you've created now your own hydrozone. We just need to really make sure that all of those pop-up heads that you are converting for your drip are all done and or they are capped. So that when that zone turns on, that valve turns on, only drip line is running to the xeric plants and not trying to water multiple things with it. So just a basic setup of your irrigation, knowing your system. When I say manifold, it's that piece in the center. Those are the valves in the box. See how they have it delineated between the lower water landscape use with the drip line to the right of it. So that's the drip, and that is dedicated to its own zone. They have pop-ups on another and the larger rotors on another. This diagram also shows smart irrigation controllers as well as different sensors that they have available for your home landscape. So after we have all of our plantings in and our hydrozoning complete and all of our drip is ran and we mulch the rest of our landscape, and I do believe that this would be a design that would get approved. It would add a lot of beauty, a lot of interest to your yard. Usually when we are installing these yards, it does become contagious. A lot of other people want to do them. It's very fun. It creates your own living space. You don't just have the same as your neighbor. And then you get to play with it throughout the years. I like integrating a lot of different boulders and cobbles just to kind of break up what we're looking at. I also love planting one rock, a plant against a rock. I think you get a lot of impact out of one plant when it has a backsplash on it. But if you're like me, I don't want to be mowing my yard every weekend, all weekend. I have a lot of kids to chase around. We're always running around on Saturdays. So, this particular home got to cut their chores in half on Saturday. That low water landscape area doesn't need a lot of attention, and you're just mowing the turf grass that's on the right. So a lot of people aren't going to make the jump to installing a low water landscape. They might, want to say, oh, I just want to reinstall or reseed or re-turf grass what I lost. I want to go back to old Kentucky bluegrass. That's great. If you want to do that, here's some tips for you to be a better steward of that water use. And then these things will help you save money. So performing proper maintenance, checking for your leaks, making the repairs, checking your system as much as you can. And then hydrozoning, making sure that if you do have mixed use heads, to either cap them or move them or hire someone to do it. Programming your system the right way is a huge way to use your water more efficiently. Never just set your controller and forget it. We live in Colorado. Our seasonality is very different. It's very different water use for turf grass in April than it is in July. So we want to make sure that we're not just setting one runtime and then keeping it consistent throughout the year. Really utilize the tools that Centennial Water has. They have recommendations for you on their website. Really utilize some of the seasonal adjustments that your controllers have. If your controller doesn't, that's when we do number 3. Let's consider some smart technologies. Let's let it do the thinking for you. These are Wi-Fi enabled, so they monitor your local ET, which is the evapotranspiration. It's a fancy way of the water you use versus the water you lose in your landscape. And that'll help you set your run times. You'll have some input on there, but that's where it's kind of fun to integrate some of the new upgrades to your irrigation system, monitor it on your phone, and you can really take control of your water use when you're utilizing the technologies. Updating your system. So this is for the parts in the ground, using those high efficiency nozzles. And then it's also modifying your system. So let's say that you have the opportunity to redo your system. So let's just rebuild it all the way from a smart controller. There's plenty of professionals. There's also a lot of how-to on any of the manufacturers' websites. They have a lot of great videos on how to install and use their products. Checking for local water restrictions and guidelines is a big one. Centennial Water's made a lot of efforts on their website to help homeowners with watering requirements, watering recommendations for different types of heads. They have a lot of helpful pictures on there. And then always check with them. Last year we did go into a drought and it did change a lot of our watering requirements. So that's something to be conscious of when we're looking to save water. Getting an irrigation evaluation. There's a lot of companies that'll come out and evaluate your irrigation. They'll make you a lot of recommendations, get you in touch with a labor force that'll either do it for you or they might do it themselves. And then this plays into, if you don't know, hire a pro. There's lots of small businesses, lots of big ones. There's lots of locals. They would love to have your business to help you save money and irrigate efficiently. So in our long-term plan for a Xeriscape, a low water landscape, these are low maintenance items, not no maintenance. Just some of the things that you'd be looking for to do, turning and adding the mulch. You're going to be weeding. There's herbicide and pre-emergent applications. So there's, pre-emergent, like a preen product that you would buy at Home Depot. Those help new weeds from taking place. They're not harmful to existing plants. They're a very low volatile chemical if we're conscious about that. There's also a lot of professionals that have a lot better tools for the pre-emergent herbicide applications. You'll be doing some deadheading and pruning. A lot of these xeric plants, the more you put into them, the more you'll get out of these. Some of the plants do respond very well to pruning and might get another bloom cycle depending on the species that you got. I know a lot of the Maynite salvias will respond to the deadheading and can push off new blooms. Rejuvenation pruning, that really helps keep our size down and let a lot of these plants that do start over from the roots, let them start over, and then you'll get some of the beneficial reasons why we select those, like the red twig dogwood. We plant that for that red wood, but over time it does turn brown and woody, but they respond very well to cutting them all the way to the ground and letting them start over, and we really get to enjoy that red wood again. You're going to have to do some plant replacements. We do live in a very harsh environment outside. Some of the winters, and mainly the late falls, are very unpredictable. I've seen 70-degree temperature swings in a day. No plants are prepared for that. It doesn't let any of them harden off, and it can kill some of our planting materials. So over time, you will have to replace some plants. Checking the irrigation, and you're still going to have to irrigate some of these plants, especially getting them established. I would always plan on a good 2 years of getting all of these xeriscape plants established. And then I always recommend your controller and your seasonal adjustments. If you don't have a smart controller, it would be going out every time the temperatures are about going to change or get higher or hotter and the days longer. We want to irrigate a little bit more. We also want to make sure that we're irrigating inside of our water window that is set by Centennial Water. That's from 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. for homeowners. So let's make sure that all of our watering gets done inside of that window. Something to be very mindful for when we're removing a turf grass yard. If there is a mature tree that we're trying to keep, this can get tricky. We want to be mindful of the roots of trees, especially when they're mature and taking up the bulk of the yard. We might want to change some of the options that we are using to get rid of the turf grass. So something like this, I would personally lean against. I would either do that lasagna layering approach and or a chemical application if there's no exposed damage to any tree roots, and we do it in appropriate time with weather and sun exposures. We don't want those chemicals to volatilize up into the tree and do damage. So the majority of a tree's roots are in the top 18 inches of the soil. So when we're out there sod cutting or digging, we really want to be mindful of where these roots are, because it's not good to damage a tree to save a little bit of water. That tree is still the higher value added portion of our landscape. And then being mindful of watering your tree. You know, this tree was most likely grown up in Kentucky bluegrass. It got plenty of water its entire life. Those trees drink from what's called the drip line. So if you were to look down on top of the tree, it's the perimeter of the canopy is where the tree is absorbing the majority of its water. So what we like to do underneath these xeric landscapes that I didn't have pictured from the first yard that we do is we like to put in Netafim drip lines and drip tubes and then plant into that so that we can have its own zone for our trees. And these trees are going to get the amount of water that they need. You can also fire them up in the wintertime to winter water your trees and then blow out your systems again. So going back to it's never a xeriscape. So the xeriscape, a lot of people, I hear zero all the time, or they go, oh, it looks like Arizona. I don't want cactus and just, stand up grasses, or a field of rock. There's a lot of beautiful, beautiful plants that we can use in our landscapes. And a lot of these have a lot of year-round interest. And then you can get multiple bloom cycles. A lot of the yards that we're doing, a lot of the new landscapes that we're installing, they have blooms on them year-round. So we get stuff going at the very beginning of the season all the way to the end. If you get on that Plant Select website, they do have a phenology chart on there, and that's the bloom cycle of all the plants. What's neat about that is it shows historically, depending on the year, when those species were blooming. So you can get a really good layout of how your plant selects are going to be blooming in your yard for you, so you can always have interest in them. Or if your target goal was pollinators, you can really make sure that you're always supplying good blooms for all of your active pollinators. So some of these plants that are my favorites, we have the Sonoran Sunset Hyssop, Coral Canyon Twin Spur, the Cape Forget-Me-Not, with lilacs, Coronado Hyssop, Maynite Salvia, Spanish Gold Broom. This is one of my favorites. This is the Red Feathers, all the coneflower varieties, Blue Sea Oat Holly, Valley Lavender, also called the Plains Verbinia, all of the Hermicallis, the daylily species, the dwarf lead plant, ice plant varieties, the gazanias, the whirling butterflies, all the sedum species. This is my favorite of the sedums, the autumn joy. It's about to go into bloom anywhere it has planted. It's awesome that it's late fall into the August months, and you can get really vibrant blooms. We have Pawnee Butte Sand Cherry. This might be the best all-around xeric shrub. It is year-round interest. And then the Denver Daisy Rudbeckia. Those are just a few of the plants, just to show there's so many beautiful plants that we have available to get in these landscapes. They're not just all cactus and yucca. Very few of them actually are. We have so many fun options. So some of the things I find a lot of success with, my favorite personal low water plantings. My favorite low water tree is going to be the Tartarian Hot Wings Maple. This is the tree form. It also comes in a clump form, which is really fun. These are my two favorite shrubs. Carol Mackie Daphne is incredibly fragrant in the early spring. It's beautiful. It's a very behaved shrub. It needs very little pruning, very little maintenance. Get these installed, and they are awesome in your landscape. The purple leaf sand cherry is a bit more fun because you have some pruning variety you can do to it. You can shear it. It's very tolerable of that. The picture plant, they've cleaned up the bottom, made it almost an espalier against the wall. It also has that cherry blossom bloom and is fragrant as well. It's a beautiful shrub. Some evergreens. Broadleaf evergreen, the Panchito manzanita is awesome. You do get a bloom cycle out of it. It's not as consistent as some other plants, but it does keep that broadleaf traditional look year round. The winter does need to be pretty harsh for those to drop its foliage. And then I like the slow mound mugo pine. I love those little candelas against the dark green foliage. I think it gives a landscape a lot of depth. It also looks very Colorado to me. Some of my favorite smaller perennials to use. I love the gay feather, all the species of the penstemons. I love blanket flower. I don't know if there's a higher bloom count per square foot than blanket flower. And then I love snow in summer to eat up space. It does creep around a lot. I call it a misbehaving plant, but it is very delicate. It's easy to pull out where you don't want it. Then my favorite combination by far is planting catmint with dianthus. I wish I had a picture of the two of them together, but I do plant these next to each other very frequently as they bloom at the same time, and the totally contrasting bloom shape and size, and the color variation is beautiful. And we're all very familiar with the Karl Forster feather reed grass. It's everywhere. A lot of the landscape has the Karl Forster, and then the Stella de Oro daylily. These are some grasses to really break up what your options are. So that Blonde Ambition Blue Grama on the left has a really fun crooked seed head. It's a variety of our state grass. It grows really, really well here. And then I like that Standing Ovation little blue stem. Really good variegated leaf. It's really fun. It also kind of fades out and gets you a cool color in the fall. But a lot of variation in these planting materials. Some other alternatives to hit our target, to go from that high to medium to low use. If we don't want to do, a large planting install of removing the turf grass, and we do want to stick with turf grass, there's an option. There's Tahoma 31. That's a blue grama species. It uses half of the amount of grass, or it's not a blue grama, it's a Bermuda grass species. I'm sorry. Uses about half the amount of water as traditional Kentucky bluegrass. Centennial Water also accepts that for the rebate program. And you can get it at sod growers, like right down the street from Highlands Ranch at Green Valley Turf. But this is a great plant. It integrates really well into your xeric landscapes if you want that traditional look of utilizing turf grass and being more responsible with your water use. It is a beautiful, beautiful full carpeted grass like Kentucky bluegrass. A lot of professional soccer fields are a Bermuda grass that are down in Florida. So it is a hardy turf grass and a sports turf variety as well. It withstands some good beating. Other alternatives is to create some living spaces, get rid of the turf grass or the area where a tree was unfortunately removed. Maybe we don't want to reinstall the grass and we want to convert everything to, a swing set or a sitting area. Both of these pictures actually have clover yards in them. Something that's very popular and getting recommended a lot is doing a 50-50 blend with a low grow white clover and like a tall fescue or lower water turf grass. It's about 50-50 seed to clover ratio of turf grass to clover. But do be careful if you're walking around barefoot. Those clovers do attract a lot of pollinators, and you can step on bees if you are barefoot in your clover yard. Unfortunately, right now, Centennial Water doesn't give you a rebate for this style of yard, but HRCA is approving clover mixed yards. Some other great alternatives to that Kentucky bluegrass is to get rid of some of that corner of lawn that you have, put an edible garden in there, get some raised beds, or plant right into the amended soils on the ground, and or put a fire pit in. So we did that one on the right. We just getting rid of small pieces of turf grass, moving some irrigation heads, and now they have an additional outdoor seating area to gather. So let's talk real quick about your approval process with HRCA. So we want to build your xeric plan, right? What are we trying to accomplish? We want to adhere to those 7 rules or principles of Xeriscape. You can choose a template that's provided, or you can design your own. You list out your plant selection, and then you get on hrcaonline.org, get on their website, click on their Xeric tab. It's going to give you a step-by-step process of what you need to submit. A big thing to remember, everybody, is to include a photo of your entire yard for them so they can see and imagine the finished product. You have a great team over here at HRCA that is approving these as fast as they can and doing as efficiently as they can. Everybody's excited about this style of landscaping as we are moving towards this, both with HRCA and Centennial Water. I know what you're thinking. I live in an HOA as well. Having to submit to get approval. There is a lot good to this. Like it keeps the standard high, it keeps these yards beautiful. It's really what attracted us to this community in the first place. So the resources that I really like to use, like I mentioned, Plant Select's website. That's a great place to get prefabricated designs, plant lists, new ideas. Castle Rock Water is doing a lot with these landscapes, and they have a lot of good resources for you as well. And the ALCC is where you can find a list of all the licensed, insured, and certified landscape professionals in Colorado. And when you're hiring professionals, if you're looking for someone to do your landscape installation or the irrigation, that Quell is a great place to start to find a qualified water efficient landscaper. In Castle Rock, all landscapers that do installs or irrigation work have to be certified. And then the SLC, the Sustainable Landscape of Colorado. So that's on the ALCC's website, /SLM. That's another certification program for professionals to ensure that they understand the longevity and the installation and the different options they have of low water landscapes and sustainable landscapes. And if you were looking for someone to chemically kill off your turf grass and or do some tree care for you, CalCap is a great resource. So that's everyone on there is certified with the Department of Agriculture with a commercial applicator chemical license. So everybody on there is trained and maintains their education. If you want to go see some landscapes that are already installed on Plant Select's websites, they have a tab under their plants, or it's under their Learn tab, and then you can click on their demonstration gardens. They have several all over the state. Chatfield Gardens has a beautiful one. Denver Botanic Gardens is a big effort. Almost everything getting installed there new is going to be low water landscape, but there's a huge list of places that you can go and see different landscapes, and you can go see them different times a year to see or indoor get inspired for what you want to do in your landscape. So that takes me to the end of my presentation. I hope I didn't speak too fast or too quick or anything, but I think we're going to open it up for questions for everybody. If Jama wants to join me.
Thanks for the great presentation, Scott. You've really left it so that I don't have a whole lot of work to do here. So we will jump right into our Q&A, and we just have a few of them here. And one of the questions is related to, well, a couple of them are related to cost. Can you give us kind of an idea of cost, maybe, the example home in Northridge that you used, or I know it's kind of a huge question to answer.
Very, very broad. It's a lot of what someone wants. So, the more material added, obviously, boulders and everything can be expensive. If you were to hire a company like mine to come in and do your yard start to finish, you can expect anywhere from $10 to $20 a square foot. It does seem like a lot. You will get rebate programs. A lot of the professional companies will also help you with all of the paperwork to send to Centennial Water. They'll also supply with you all the planning materials and the plans to get everything approved with HRCA. So they'll be with you throughout the process. If you're doing it yourself, so with your approval process, doing it yourself, you do need to start and complete your project. So we're seeing anywhere from the $3 to $7 a square foot if people are doing it on their own. I do know a lot of companies like mine are trying to work with like a version of a garden in a box to where we do bring the material to you to allow you to do it yourself. I do think that that's going to open up a lot of options for homeowners to do it a lot cheaper. But right now the conversion process can be expensive, especially if you're cutting out turf grass and then removing and disposing of it. So to mitigate cost a lot is to keep the turf grass present and then chemically kill it off. I know those are pretty broad, so anywhere from $3 to $20 a square foot, and it's very dependent on what someone wants. There's other options. You can have companies come in, install your boulders, and you guys can take it from there. I would, if you wanted to use a professional, I would start contacting some, get some quotes, seeing what they can work with you, what parts you're willing to do, what parts you're not willing to do on your own. But you have a lot of options out there. This is definitely the hot thing in landscape. A lot of companies like mine are doing a lot of work with this, and we're trying to figure out a way to have more people do it. So it does become more of a trend, and we really like it. It's fun. So it can be expensive, but it can also be cheaper if you do a lot of it on your own.
Absolutely. Probably get some good exercise out there too. And then, so next question is, what is your process working around or incorporating healthy trees?
Yeah. So as an arborist, for me, I'm always trees first. So when we're looking, and I show up to, let's say, your yard and you have multiple trees, my number one priority is going to be maintaining the health of those trees. It is the hardest thing to get to maturity in Colorado. We want to get those trees growing. We want to make sure that they stay happy and healthy. So that's where we're going to utilize different options. We do not like to use the mechanical removal of the turf grass. So we want to keep the soil level the same and build up either berms to plant in with our planting materials and or plant into that and be conscious of where we're going to plant our plants. And if we do run into larger roots, to move it. And that's one of those benefits where I was saying you can play with your design a lot. You don't have to adhere to these straight lines. If you do need to move a plant a little bit because you're on top of a root, these designs allow you to play with your locations a little bit and or clump plants together. But you can play with your elevations by bringing in some soil. And then we want to make sure that we're irrigating those mature trees. I always tell people if it did grow up in Kentucky bluegrass, there's a better possibility that those roots are going to be even closer to the surface, because why work harder for all the resources it needs than it has to? There are some anchoring roots, but trees aren't tap roots like I do here frequently. Carrots are tap roots. Trees have some anchoring roots, and then they have a lot of roots that are going along the surface. So we really want to keep those fine, small, fibrous roots in the area we would be removing the turf grass in as best shape as we possibly can. So that is the number one thing when we're looking. That's our step one, is where are the mature trees and what are we keeping in this landscape?
Awesome. Okay, another question. Is there a preferred time of year for this type of work?
So if you're going to chemically remove your turf grass, it does need to be actively growing. If you're going to start the process of removing your turf grass mechanically, let's say you're not impeded by a tree, you can do that work in the winter. But there is also the issue of wanting to get your rebates and some of the incentive programs. So that would be something I'd reach out to Centennial about starting the project off season. If you're not concerned about that, there's never a bad time to demo your yard. Let's just be mindful of how long the process would take with the inclement weather, and the mud and everything. So when you don't have any turf grass on your yard, the runoff into the street and the erosion control is gone when you get rid of the turf grass. So you can be a little bit messier longer, but there's no reason why you can't remove the turf grass mechanically, remove the older planting materials, install some of the harder to do things like boulders and cobble and rock, and then finish it off later. If Centennial is working with you on your rebate, or if you don't mind, you just can move forward on your own and then get the planting material in the spring. I always say plant in the spring just because the plant material selection at the nurseries is always a little bit higher and a little bit higher quality. You're always going to have more plants. A lot of the local nurseries, they don't want to bring in a lot of planting material that they might not sell late in the season. So your pickings might be a little bit slim late in the year for your plant material.
Okay. And this question, can turf grass be eliminated completely? Is artificial turf permitted? I can answer this one. As far as rules and regulations go, HRC does allow artificial turf. It is allowed in the backyard and the front. We have a limited percentage that is allowed in the front yard. That would be 50%. Your plans would need to be submitted. All artificial turf must be 2 feet away minimum from property lines. And I like to see the sample of the turf that you are proposing to install. Scott, do you have any thoughts on artificial turf?
Yeah, if you were to ask me if that's a xeric install, I would say no. It does achieve the low to no water use, but it doesn't add any of the benefits. It doesn't improve your soil. It doesn't add value to the environment, but it does decrease, your water consumption. There are places for it, and I do understand why we want to use it. But I don't think it adheres to enough of the principles of xeric to call it a true xeric landscape install. It's just artificial turf grass.
Okay. And then next question, can we replace 100% of the turf, especially in the front yard? Yes, you can replace your grass, your sod in your front yard, with any one of these gorgeous plans that Scott has put together for us. So yeah, we absolutely welcome that. Hmm?
The majority of the yards that we're doing are full yard landscape xeric installs. They're full turf grass removal front yards. I have one at my house. My kids play in my xeric way more than they played in my turf grass. They love jumping on the boulders and playing around and watching the hummingbirds and the bees. And it's just a little bit more of a natural environment. And it's fun to see those things just come out of nowhere for you. If you haven't seen hummingbirds a lot around your house, maybe you had a feeder. But the second you give them all of these natural sources for plants, it's amazing how many are around us.
Absolutely. And then, is there ever a time when you would prefer to use a plastic membrane instead of a fabric?
No, I like the landscape fabric because it is permeable. It does allow some amount of air and roots to grow through it. I don't think there's a perfect product, but I do like to use the products that are more designed for the landscape install. We personally do not use a lot of the plastics. If you're going to use the plastic to kill off your turf grass, that's fine, but let's be mindful of those tree roots utilizing the plastic as it does heat up the soil. It doesn't let air through or water through to those tree roots that are there. The majority of the air a tree brings in is through its root system. So you are going to be suffocating that temporarily to get rid of your turf grass if that's what you're using the plastic membrane for. I don't like them permanently installed. Mainly, a lot of times that plastic is a black, and you can kind of see it through the landscape. I like using a grayer fabric in my cobble rock, so it kind of blends in a little bit and doesn't look like, when you're installing a natural look, and then you see plastic, kind of deters from that naturalistic approach of a xeric install.
And then do you have I'm surprised we haven't gotten this question yet, up until the end, but bunny damage. I bet you get a lot of questions about bugs and bunnies and damage to lawns.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of these plants that rabbits decimate. They will nibble on a lot of them. A lot of these xeric plants are highly resinous and are, they're cultivated off native cultivars or native species. The resiliency is a little bit higher. They're not as desirable to be fed upon. You are going to see more bugs. You're going to see a lot more pollinators. You're going to see predatory species. You'll see some more spiders as well. You will create tiny little ecosystems inside your yards when you're doing this. But as far as rabbits decimating these, I don't have a lot of problems with it, honestly. I have more trouble keeping rabbits out of Kentucky bluegrass than I do any xeric or any low water landscape planting. A lot of these plants have lived for thousands of years amongst all the native herbivores, and the reasons why we're selecting those is because they're tough. Some of them are completely deer and rabbit resistant. And a lot of that information per plant is on a lot of the websites. And like I said, I like using that Plant Select website because it's 100% for Colorado, propagated for us specifically. So there's nothing on there where you can lose. You're getting 100% plant that's designed for us right here. But no, I don't see a lot of rabbit damage in my xeric. I do see them living in it. They do take advantage of being able to hide in your yard and burrow under some of the rocks because you are creating more of an ecosystem, more of a natural environment for them. But I don't see a lot of damage from rabbits. I do see it more in the grass, and that's where it's one of those things. If you're fighting rabbits constantly, maybe it's time to get rid of some of that grass.
One thing I've noticed personally, Scott, are Japanese beetles.
Yeah, so Japanese beetles love herbaceous plants. They love our roses. They love, some of our softer plants, some of the non-native species. These native species, like I mentioned, are a little bit hardier than some of the plants that you would get that are bred for pure, beauty and enjoyment. Like we spent so much energy on a lot of rose cultivars and a lot of rose species. Well, unfortunately, when we're breeding those, we can breed out the resiliency in some of these plants. There are some species that the Japanese beetle will eat on a little bit. They will feed on, but they don't completely decimate a lot of these xeric plants. Like I said, they're resinous. They don't taste as good. A lot of them have thicker cuticle leaves, so they can hold water in them more. Makes them less desirable to eat by the bugs. A lot of the native species aren't getting hammered. And then what you're also doing is in this life cycle of a Japanese beetle, they are laying their eggs in the late summer on your turf grass, your irrigated turf grass. Those larvae overwinter in your turf, eating your root of your turf grass, and then they emerge to then eat your roses and everything. So they're attacking you twice if you're having turf grass and highly irrigated, rose shrubs, or what's something else they really like. Hypericum, the hypericums get hit by on. Potentia is a low water plant that they get to eat a little bit. But I don't see complete plant loss from Japanese beetle with these species. And then Japanese beetle, I always tell people to get rid of your traps. At first, that was kind of a good idea. We thought we were trapping and killing a lot of them, but the populations are so high now. What you're doing is attracting them to your yard. So we want to kind of try to keep those populations evenly spread so that when you do hire professionals to chemically treat, we are decimating and hitting target populations. There's a lot of great chemicals out there that are very, very targeted approach and species specific. If you do want to have some mitigation of Japanese beetle, if you have that problem, I know the closer you are to Santa Fe, the worse it gets. We do a lot of treatment. A lot of other professionals do treatments as well. Linden trees are something that we won't ever really get rid of, and that's kind of been a problem. We have some organic approaches as well for Japanese beetle mitigation, but I don't see it a lot in the newer xeric landscapes. Over time they might evolve to have a better taste for some of these plants, but right now these plants have a lot of resilient factors to them to keep pests off of them.
Interesting. Okay. I have a question for me. Do you need to submit landscape plans for backyards to HRCA? Yes. We focus as much on the backyard of a home as we do on the front. So yes, if you're going to make changes to your rear yard, I would ask that you please submit your plans. There's a whole list of required items that I look at. Best of all, some nice big pictures of your backyard, a list of materials, a drawing of what it's going to look like, just to kick it off. But I'd be happy to answer any questions about how to submit those plans as well. And then a question for you, Scott. Does your team install boulders, big decorative rocks, and can you move existing boulders in the yard?
Yes. Both, yes. We do want to be conscious of driving any heavy equipment over tree roots, but yes, we will move existing boulders and or deliver boulders. As this, more and more people move to this, like I mentioned earlier, me and a couple other companies are looking into streamlining some delivery approaches for you guys to do it yourselves, or where you can utilize the professionals to get the heavy work done and or your boulders and your cobble work, and then you guys can take it from there with your planting materials. But yeah, those boulders can be quite heavy, and we do need to utilize either drive-on skids or full-blown skid steers and loaders to move those rocks for you. But yes, that is something we do.
Awesome. When suffocating your turf grass using the organic method, you mentioned you can plant right into the medium. Can you plant right into the compost immediately, or is there a wait time?
So what we really want to do is make sure we leave it long enough to kill off the grass under it. So big reason we use the Kentucky bluegrass is it is a very resilient species. It grows by a lateral root called a rhizome. So what we want to do is choke it off long enough not to just kill the leaf blade, but to kill the root structure of the turf grass as well. It's the main benefit of the Kentucky bluegrass is it self-fills in these areas. So it is pretty tricky to kill. It does take some time. I don't have an exact timeline of how long this takes. It's an approach we don't use a lot as professionals because we have other methods available. But it does need to be on there for quite some time to kill off the roots. It's not just the blade of the grass you want to see fade and die off. Because when then you do install your yard, those rhizomes will find a way to pop up and start taking back over. So you really want to be conscious of when you start to expose those elements again to water and light, because they will start to grow again when you start cutting into it and planting and disturbing the soil. But yes,
And
you
now,
can
oh, sorry.
yeah, I would plant right into the compost, and I like to use compost native soil, a mix. If you're digging out some areas of your yard, to utilize that as well, not dispose of it. So utilize whatever soil you have that's native in that compost mix. But what you're trying to do is essentially choke it out with light and air a little bit, but adding some organic matter, allowing some of the light and some of the water to get through into the soil. You're also leaching good beneficial material through the top of that lasagna layered into the soil below. So it is good. It's a good practice. Something I don't utilize a lot because of the time that it takes for it to kill off the turf grass.
Okay, and related to that, to that question, we received a question about chemically removing the grass and how long to plant new plants.
Yeah, so I always tell people 10 days is what the label says for the majority of the glyphosate products, the non-selective herbicides, like the Roundup. I always wait about 2 weeks, mainly because I want to come back at that 10-day mark and see if we do need to reapply, because that turf grass can be very stubborn. We're also not just, if you hire a responsible chemical applicator, they're not going to come out and apply an inappropriate amount of chemical to your turf grass. So it might take 2 rounds of treatment. What we really want to try to do is mitigate how much of that residual chemical is left in the soil, and then how much does volatilize in the environment. And we want to limit both of those as much as we can. So when we are using any chemical, please read the label, please adhere to the guidelines on the label. And when you hire a professional, please look for one that is certified with the Department of Agriculture, as they will most likely adhere to the label and to the appropriate use of the chemical for what they're trying to do as well. So it might take multiple applications, but I do like to wait at least 2 weeks. The label does say, I do believe it's about 10 days is what the label says, but I would rather be safe than sorry with my money and my investment.
Of course. And this last question that I'm seeing here is asking about conflicts between someone who wants to Xeriscape and possibly the next door neighbor who doesn't like it. Honestly, we haven't had conflict. If anything, it's kind of Xeriscaping seems to be kind of contagious. So fortunately, that isn't one that we've had a question about before or had any conflicts with.
So I would just recommend being mindful of what space is yours and what space is theirs, and then sharing that appropriately and really making sure that you're not encroaching on their landscape. Obviously, right? Like if you want to landscape theirs, but if you have a shared yard, I mean, it's kind of a fun project to do with your neighbor. You do your entirety of your yard, and eliminate chores for both of you. These can look really, really beautiful. I always recommend putting way too many plants in, other than so you just see all the beautiful blooms and plants rather than the rock and the mulch. Um, I do know the gal over at Centennial Water. You have a water conservationist that's quite talented that helps run all these programs for you guys. That's always her method: is pack them in, pack in the beauty, and that's something that we recommend to do: is utilize all these fun plants that you have. And it is very contagious. We see a lot of times when someone does it, someone else will do it. And it doesn't have to be your whole yard. It can be that weird little side piece of grass that you have on the side of your yard. You irrigate part of your driveway. You get your car all the time, runs down the sidewalk. Some people just turn off the water to it altogether because it's such a pain. We don't want to mow it. Those are great spots to start. Small square footage. You can utilize cool programs like that Garden in the Box for how small all that square footage is. You don't want to do a lot of the legwork. But those are great spots to start. Like I said, you find the places that you're putting up a fight. It's not, successful, and one of those like small shared driveway end pieces that you have with your neighbor could be a good spot to, do it with a friend and share some of that burden load of the manual labor, and do those together. But we do see it be quite contagious. I see less apprehension and less people butting heads over it, and more like, damn, I want to do some of that too. Or, no, I don't see you mowing. I want to do that too. Or that's so beautiful. It's so much better than just the grass. I mean, we have plenty of grass here in Highlands Ranch. So changing up some of these landscapes is a fun new thing to do.
Absolutely. We've gotten submittals for 2 homeowners at a time where they want to coordinate their efforts and put in some xeriscaping in those little side yards next to your driveways. They turn out gorgeous too. Then looks like we're getting close to the end of our session. We could take one more question, and maybe Scott, you can answer this. I certainly can't speak to who has availability for landscaping availability and quotes, but how are you doing, Scott?
I'm very busy. So we do a lot of large scale maintenance. I do a lot of this on a large scale. We do a lot of it for HOAs where we're moving acres at a time sometimes and converting it into xeric landscapes. We do some residential work as well. This time of year, everybody's pretty booked, but I would highly recommend using the search engines that are on those affiliations that I mentioned to find some certified guys. What you get out of the people that are certified is you're going to get someone that can help you plan a little bit better. And then if you don't want to utilize all of their services, they'll help you plan, how much you can do, how much they can do for you. But most landscape companies come this time of year, come August. Our books are pretty full for a lot of professional landscapers. And then our eyes are always forward looking to snow removal, which is right around the corner for everybody. It's the saddest thing to say out loud when there's still blooms on shrubs, but it is the reality of landscaping in Colorado. So a lot of us are looking to close our year out here pretty soon.
Hard to believe it's gone that fast. I think we're going to kind of wrap things up here. The Xeric templates we're going to get put up on our website as soon as we can. Again, the email, if anybody has any more questions or if you have questions or concerns about submitting, that is improvements with an S on the end at hrcaonline.org. This meeting is recorded so that you can watch it as many times as you'd like once we get finished here tonight. And I want to thank Lawn Care Solutions for giving us the opportunity to learn more about xeriscaping from Scott here. And thanks to everyone who's joined us here this evening. I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.